Tutorial 1, we'll go through the steps required to create this generic component, and it will give you some insight into using the sketch tool as well as the extrude tool. So I'm just going to go on and open Creo to get started. Okay, so when you've loaded up Creo, the first thing we need to do is set the working directory. So any files that we would create will be saved in the relevant location. So to do that, we just go select working directory. And so on this computer I actually have a folder set up on the desktop, and ENGD1019 and tutorials. So I want all my files to be saved here. Now when you're using a university computer, we recommend that you do not save it locally. You either save it to a USB stick or to your network storage. Okay, so to start a new part, we click New in the top ribbon. It's just an individual part, so we leave it as the part, and we give it a relevant name. So I'm just going to call this T1. It's really important that we untick this use default template. So Creo is an American software, so by default the standard units are imperial, so we need to change those to SI. So if I untick this and click OK, you'll see that the standard template is in inches, and we need to change that to millimeters. So if we just come down here and select that, all of the units will now be in millimeters. Okay, so we're now in the 3D environment, and the first thing that I'm going to do is draw an outline sketch of this whole plate. Okay, so to do that I'm just going to select, you can select any of the dentums, but I'll just select this one here and click sketch. Okay, so we've got some built-in references that Creo has automatically generated for us, and what I like to do when we're sketching, as it's 2D, there's a button here called sketch view, and it basically squares the view up for you. So sketch view. So now we can see we're in a 2D view. So the first thing that I've got, so I'm going to do the overall outline for the shape, and that is it's basically based off a rectangle. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool. So I'll click the rectangle tool here, and you'll see that the cursor has now changed to this sort of X symbol, and what you'll find is that if you drag the cursor towards these lines, it automatically snaps to them. So that's useful for drawing our rectangle. So I'm going to start off by positioning the cursor like in the dead center of the references. See that it auto snaps to that point. Then I just left click once, and that then allows me to draw the outline of a rectangle. Now at this stage it doesn't really matter the size, because we can change the dimensions once we decided on where we would like to position this rectangle. Okay, so I'm happy with the rectangle there, so I'm just going to left click, and you'll see if you just click once, you're still in the rectangle tool. It's still highlighted up here, and we can actually add more geometry if we wanted to. So if I wanted to add another rectangle to the side of this, I could do that. But I'm happy with just this rectangle. So to confirm that, I could just click on this rectangle button here to come out of the tool, or you can just press the middle mouse button. And you'll see what happens is we get a shaded area. So that means that we have a completed loop generated by the sketch lines. Okay, and that would mean that we can then extrude this shape. Obviously the dimensions here are not what we need, so we can change those. I'm just going to drag them out of the way. So if you click on any of these with the left mouse button, you can then just, if you click and hold, you can just drag them out of the way. Just do the same with this one. Okay, so the height of our rectangle from the drawing is 110, and the width is 150. Okay, so that's the basic outline. So I'm just going to accept that sketch. Okay, and if we have a look in the model tree now, we've now got sketch 1, and that's the basic rectangle. So you can see the sketch is blue, but then if I click on the sketch within this tree here, it then goes green, so that means that it's highlighted. Now with the sketch highlighted, if I press the extrude button and then I change the view, what we can see is we've now got a 3D shape, and we can change the thickness of this by clicking on this ball. We can just move it up, drag it up and down. we can double click here and specify a value. Or if we come to dialog box at the top, we can also put a value in here. So if we have a look at the drawing, the thickness of this plate is 10. Okay. So if we're happy with that, again, we just press the tick mark here. So we've now got in the model tree a sketch and an extrude. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is try and get the overall outline for this shape. So what I will do is start by creating a new sketch. So we'll click on the sketch, and this little dialog box has come up, and so this is asking me for the plane in which I would like to sketch. So when we have a 3D shape, we can choose different faces of this part as sketching planes. So if I wanted to, I could click this plane here, this plane, but actually in this case I just want to use this top plane here. So if I click that, we now see that the reference is complete, and we just press sketch. And again, Creo's added in some reference lines for us. And so if we go to sketch view, we can see we've got a reference in the Y and the X directions. Now, for this shape, it'd be really useful actually if we had some extra references put in. So these references are useful because they allow us to snap tools to them. So actually being able to snap to these edges along here would also be useful. So we can add extra references. So if I click the reference tool up here, we see that we've got the first two references, so the ones that are automatically generated by Creo, but we can also add extra ones. So if I click this line along the top here, I've got a new reference, so that means that I can now snap to this top edge, and then also along here. Okay, so once you've got all the references, you just click close, and they will stay there. And now if I use any of the tools, I can snap to these lines, so it'll make life a little bit easier for us. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, draw this cutout section along the bottom here. And to do that, I'm going to use the line tool. So if I click on this line tool, again you'll notice the cursor's changed, and this is what I mean by these lines, being able to snap to them. So I can snap to these points. Okay, and what I need to do now is basically draw an overall sort of impression of what this cutout needs to look like. So I'm going to start off by snapping to this corner. Okay, so snap right into the corner, and I left click once, and you'll see that then allows me to drag out this line to any position that I would like. So the first one I'm going to do is just drag it up here. Now what you'll find is as you move along these lines, that it will sometimes snap to midpoints. So this can be useful sometimes, but actually in this case, the height for this line is not the midpoint, so I'm going to avoid that snapping effect. Okay, so I'm going to click there. Then that allows me to bring out another line that's attached, that carries on from the previous line. And so this time I need a horizontal line. And then we come back down, so we've got a vertical line, horizontal. And now what we can do is, if I come up, you'll see at some point when you bring the cursor up, you get this little equal sign next to the cursor, and the opposite line turns green. So that means that you're adding a constraint in, meaning that these lines will always be of equal length. And if we look at the drawing, that is actually what we need, so I'm going to accept that. So you just accept that by left clicking. So another horizontal line, so I'm going to avoid trying to get any, look, you can see here when I snap to a certain point, it makes the line equal to that line. I don't actually want that, so I'm just going to avoid that snapping. Come down a little bit there to the bottom. And now it's really important when we use the line tool that we actually form a continuous line. And so I need to close this up. So I'm just going to go to the corner and left click. Okay. And then I'm happy with the outline, so then I just press the middle mouse button. And then the middle mouse button again, and we've got the overall sort of outline for this shape. So I'm just going to go along and move some of these dimensions to clean up the view a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to first off start by setting the height here. So this should be 50. Okay, this depth here, so it's not actually specified on the drawing. You could calculate it, so you could say it's 50 minus 20, so it's 30. But what you can do is you can override some of the auto-generated dimensions. So if you click up here on the dimension tool, I want a dimension from here to here. So what I'll do is I'll click on one of the lines, this line here, I'll press Control, hold Control, and then click on the next line. Okay, and then move the cursor somewhere and press the middle mouse button. Okay, so that's basically removed the automatically generated constraint, and we've put in our new one that matches the drawing. So this should be 20. Okay, and so if I go along here, this one here should be 30, and this one should be 30. Right, so this width should be 10, and then, okay, so what we've got here is Creo's put in a total length. We don't actually have that on the drawing. We have a distance here from here to here on the drawing, so we need to override that. So if I go to Dimension Tool, click on this line, hold Control, left click on the next line, press the middle mouse button. Okay, and so this needs to be 60. Okay, so you can see here we've had a bit of an issue with this sketch, so it's basically gone outside of this line here. Don't worry about that, we can fix that in a second. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, and then if we go here on the dimension tool, click here, I need to set a dimension for this. And actually, this needs to be minus 10. Okay, so you can see that we fixed it now. This will sometimes happen with sketches. It's just one of those things. It's a peculiarity of the software. Okay. So that's the overall dimensions for this part of the sketch. Now what we also have is a cutout at the top here. So there's a sort of a radius that cuts off here. So we can do that in the same sketch. And so that's what I'm going to do now. So this time what I'm going to use is the circle tool. So if I click on the circle tool, and actually I'm going to snap it along this line here. So we can see that it says a radius of 20. So I'm using the circle tool. And so a radius of 20 means that the diameter of a circle is 40. So I'll just click that, press the middle mouse button and change this diameter to 40. Okay. So what on the drawing we've got a dimension from here to here. Now we know that the radius is 20, so that means that from the center of this circle to the end here, we've got a distance of actually 30. Okay. And now to make the rest of the cutout, I'm going to draw some lines that attach to the bottom segment of this circle, top segment of this circle, and then join it up along here. And that will give us the outline for the shape. So to do that, I'll use the line tool. What you'll find is that with circles that you can snap onto the quarter segments of the circle. So if I click on the bottom here, left click, and then just drag the line out horizontally to this end, and then click again, and press the middle mouse button, and then we'll come to the top and do the same thing. So I just snap onto the segment, and draw a line out, press the left mouse button, and then this time we're going to carry on with the line and drag it to the previous line. Press the left mouse button, middle mouse, middle mouse. And so you can see here there's a bit of an issue with this sketch. So obviously the total outline that we would like is this semicircle, this line, and this line. And so this geometry here is actually confusing the software and not giving us a shaded section. Okay, so to do that, what we need to do is basically delete these lines, these internal lines. And so we can do that using the delete segment tool. So along the top here. So with this tool highlighted, you can just go up to any line that you would like and delete it. You just click it and delete it. Or you can use it another way. So if you just hold the left mouse button, you'll then start drawing this line as you move the mouse. So any line that you cross will then be deleted. So if I just let go of the left mouse button, you'll see that I delete that section of line. Now if I press the middle mouse button, you'll see that I now have a highlighted area. Okay, so if I remove these sections now, I'll get the overall outline for the shape described on the drawing. So I'm just going to click OK. And so to remove material, we actually use the same function as to add material. So we use the extrude tool. And so I had the sketch highlighted, I pressed the extrude tool, and you can see here that what it's trying to do is add the material. So that's not what we want to remove it. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is flip the direction. So to flip direction, you can drag this and move it below. You can use the arrow flips the direction. And what we need to do is actually tell this that we're not adding material, we're removing material. So if we come to the extrusion ribbon at the top, there's this button here that says remove material. So if I click that, you'll see that now it's removing it rather than adding it. And obviously what we can do, we can set the thickness for the cut, but there's actually a really handy tool in here. So if you go to this little drop down menu, you have this one, and that just basically means that it will go through all of the material that's there. Okay, so if you're happy, once we're happy, we just click the little tick mark. So we've got the basic outline for the shape. Now what I'm going to do is show you how to use another tool. So we've got a tool called the hole tool. So this is another way of generating like circular features on your components. And so to do that, we just click on the hole tool, and then what you need to do is click on a surface which the hole is perpendicular to. So we'll click the surface here, and you'll see that we've got this sort of depiction of the circle that we're going to be cutting out of the material. Okay, so in this case the diameter is 20, and what we can do for positioning this, you'll see these little broken sort of squares, and what you can do is you can drag these to certain features, and then your center of your hole will be referenced to those features. Okay, so if I click this one here, just click with the left mouse button, then drag whilst holding the button to a face. So you can see I'm connecting it to this face over here, and what happens is the square sort of completes. So it's broken, and then you attach it to a face, and it becomes complete. Okay, and it then puts in a reference dimension for you. We can do the same thing with this one here, so we'll drag it and bring it down to this face here. Okay, and then what we need to do is just specify these dimensions. So just do that same way, just double click. Okay, and then again you can specify the depth, or if you come along to the top here, it has that same tool that says all the way through material. And we just click OK. Okay, so it doesn't really matter which way you generate these holes, so you can use the hole tool or extrusions, it doesn't make much difference. So all I need to do now is so there's two more holes here, a larger hole here, and then a square cut out here. So to do that, I'm going to go back to using the sketch tool. So sketch, I'm going to pick this top face as my plane, and click sketch. and then we're going to go to sketch view. So the sketch view up here, but there's also one on this dialog box here, so just click that. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I think I will add another reference on this top edge here again. So just click reference, add that edge as a reference. Okay, close. Okay, so for the square cutout, we'll just use the rectangle tool, and it's around here. So obviously we can position it correctly once we've drawn the actual geometry. So just left click, and what you can see now is that depending on how I move the cursor, if I move it to a certain point, we end up with these two lines that go green and the little equal sign. So that means that you have a square, so it means that those two lengths are of the same value. Okay, so I want it to be square, so that's fine, and then we just left click and then press the middle mouse button. So you'll see here when we have a square, there's obviously there's one dimension because all of the sides are the same length. So we'll just change that to 20. So the distance from the back wall is 10. And okay, so it's put in a reference from the top. We would like a reference from the bottom here. So we'll go dimension from this bottom edge, press hold control, click the next line, and then middle mouse button. And so that height should be 60. Okay. So now we add in some circles. So there's a circle here. And then as I want another circle, what happens is you can now reference to the center of this circle. So if I get it to a certain point, it sort of snaps, so it's in line with the center point. So these two circles are actually in line. So I'm going to use that to my advantage. And then I just left click, and then also they're actually the same diameter. So again, I can make them so that they're equal. So that means I only have to dimension one of them. Okay, so I left click. And then finally, we've got this larger hole around here. So what I'm going to do is actually, it's in line with this hole. So I can snap in line with the center of the previous hole. And then just draw. I don't want it to be an equal size, so I just come a little bit larger. Middle mouse button. Okay, so now I can change some of these dimensions. So what you'll see now is these two holes are the same diameter. So I've got 1 and 1, so they're both of equal size. So if I change this to 20, the other one will automatically update. So you can see that they both change size. Okay, so from the top, so we've got a dimension that goes from the baseline to the center of this circle. So I need to get rid of this one. So I'll go from here, press Control, click the center, and press the middle mouse button. And so that should be 90. Okay, and then distance. So we've got a distance from the center of the hole to this end line here. So I'm going to add that. So I'll so I click on this line, press Control, left mouse button, again a middle mouse button, and then we can specify this. So that's 60, and then I have a dimension that is from the center of this circle, press and hold Control, click the center of the second circle, press the middle mouse button, and change this to 50. Okay, and then finally this circle here has a diameter of 40. Okay. So they're all in the correct position. Actually, there's one thing that I need to do. So it's the height of this center circle, and this is 50. Okay, so now everything's complete. We click OK. And now obviously we need to remove that material, so we'll go extrude. And then what we'll do is we'll flip it back the other way. And this time it's automatically recognised that this material needs to be removed. But again, we'll set it so that it goes through all material. Okay. Okay, so that's the part created for tutorial 1. I'm just going to show you a little trick. So what you can do at any point, if you go make a mistake or you go wrong, you can go back to any of these stages within the model tree. So if we want to go back to our original sketch, if we click on here, if we just left click and then this little box comes up and you can go edit definition. So if you click that, you go back to the original shape that you produced. And so if you change any of these dimensions here, what will actually happen is it will then auto-generate the rest of the model for you, taking into account your change. So if I click OK now, you can see that everything's sort of moved along, and yeah, so that's gone thick, but it was remembered what you've done afterwards as well. So if we go back, if you make a mistake, you just go edit definition, and we can change that back. Okay, that's fine. You can also, what we can do is change the thickness of any of our extrudes. So for this first extrude here, if we edit definition, we can change this to 20. We can make it thicker. Okay, you can see it's just a little bit thicker now. And go back and change that again. So once you've finished with your part, always remember to save. So you just need to go File, Save. And what will happen is it will go, because we set the working directory, it will go into the folder that you set, and then there's a file name there. You don't have to write anything in Save To, you just click OK, and that will save the file for you.